Morning, Bruce.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Fix It, lecture number 3, our last one for this particular course. And just before we started recording, Dustin and I were going back and forth on the difference between being rich and being wealthy. And the difference, I think Chris Rock said it, if you're an NBA star like LeBron James, you're rich. You get, 20, 30, $35 million a year. That makes you rich for sure, but not wealthy. It's the person who signs LeBron's check, who owns the franchise and all the rights that come with it, who's wealthy, because when he or she is sleeping or lying on a beach, that franchise is still generating revenues and wealth. It's creating wealth. And real estate is like that. So real estate is, I've said it before to this class and others, real estate is a business model for dummies like me, but it does produce wealth. And you've heard me talk about maybe as many as almost 2/3 of the wealthy people in Europe, in Canada, the United States, and Mexico have all or substantially all of their wealth in real estate. It's because once you control a property, you own that. It's like owning a franchise in the National Hockey League or in the National Football League. It's your franchise. And if there's any rights to be exploited from that particular location, they're yours to exploit, at least in countries that respect property rights. So if you want to be wealthy, I think one of the ways to get there is to own real estate. If you want to be rich, pick the right parents, and if you're 7 foot tall and you can dunk a basketball, you could probably be rich, okay? But none of us get to pick our parents. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen with you guys. We are recording, and see, I was playing some music. I don't need that anymore. So here we are again. All right, let me blow this up a bit. And Denise and Stuart, or somebody told me to, I think it might've been Mary Lou, told me to move the people aside so you can see my screen better. So Dustin, just give me the thumbs up if you can see my screen okay. Okay, so I guess the people were showing up in the replay, and I didn't know that, so unfortunately some of my screen is blocked up. So anyway, this is Fix It, how to earn $10,000 a month or more from your own simple to create high-performing real estate portfolio without breaking a sweat. And remember, that those last 3-4 words are not actually accurate. I mean, we all have to do some work to earn a living, even in real estate. I got permission from Tiff, Tiff Smith. You can see a picture of her on the left with her little boy Ryker, to use her and her son Ryker as a case study for today. It's one of the case studies I'm going to do. And today what I'd like to focus on is real estate, another case study like this, but also financing real estate. I'm going to do more in the next course that I do in March, but I am going to focus a fair bit today on how do you actually finance real estate. And I'll tell you one of my sad stories as well. I'm just going to check the chat box, make sure I've got everybody here. Yeah, okay. So anyway, so this is Tiff on the left, and with her little boy, Ryker, cute little kid. And right now, Tiff is living with her mom. She's bunking in with her mother in Hamilton, Ontario. And she was thinking, do I buy a place? What do I do to bring up my boy and to make a life for myself? And I think it was her mom said, hey, Tiff, I got a backyard garage. Aren't you learning backyard garages, and you could do something with my backyard garage. So you can see it here in the picture on the right. There is the detached garage in the backyard. Aha, there's your first clue. And Mary Lou, thank you again for telling me to move the people away from the main screen, which I think I've done properly today. So Tiff allowed me again to share her personal circumstances with you. She is a single mother. She's in transition right now. She is a professional photographer and wonderful photographer. I've known her for a number of years. As I said, she's living with her mother after leaving her former situation, and she does not have a lot of cash exiting the relationship. So that is a concern. On the left-hand side of my screen, you're going to see a shot. This is a series, I think, on Netflix, which I watched, which I absolutely loved. It's called Made, and it's a wonderful series about a young woman. You could see her here with her daughter, in very similar circumstances, exiting a very difficult situation, and how she has to cope with intense poverty. And it really tugs at least it does at my heartstrings, because I think family breakup and the increase in poverty amongst single mothers is incredible. The two fastest growing cohorts in our population, whether it's the United States or Canada, that are suffering from poverty are elders, my age and older, and young mothers, single moms. These are the two, and part of the reason why I got into coaching was to help people prepare for their elder years, and even young people like Dustin. One day he'll be old, and so I wanted to make sure that I could help these people, but I also wanted to help, in particular, people like Tiff and this young woman perhaps do a little bit better. I also help many professional athletes, and you might think, oh my gosh, Bruce, you were talking about Shaq and you were talking about LeBron and all these people making tens of millions of dollars, but it's incredible that 75% of National Football League players are broke within 5 years of their playing days. And 75%, and many of them have made many, many millions of dollars. I think it's around 50% in the National Hockey League. I don't know what it is in the NBA or Major League Baseball, but I assume it's quite bad too. And so what I teach athletes to do is to put between 10 and 20% of their revenues, as they are getting these big paychecks, aside and invest in real estate. And for them, the business model, very similar to what I've been talking about for the last few weeks with you guys, and that is to keep the model extremely simple. So they typically will buy homes, maybe not very expensive ones, in their hometowns. Many of them come from Florida, from Alabama, from Mississippi, from Texas, and they buy, some of them have bought a few hundred modest homes, and they rent them out. And they put them in their own name. They don't put them in their wife's name, their girlfriend's name, their agent's name, their hangers-on. They don't put them in a corporate name. They put them in their own name, at least if they're being coached by me. And the reason for that is that, let's say you were a wealthy a basketball player, and you own 100 homes in your hometown, and maybe they weren't very expensive, $200,000 each, and you're making, I'm just making up the numbers, $15,000 each. You've got 100 of them. It means you're making $1.5 million of net operating income from your real estate portfolio, and it's in your own personal name. Yes, it's true, you have to pay taxes because you're earning that money. But if everything else runs away, companies can run away. You could get injured, and your career can end. If you only had those 100 homes, and that income from that, if nothing else, like Dustin was saying a few minutes ago, at least you'd have something to fall back on. My dad used to call that an iron reserve. So I do some very simple things with professional athletes. You guys can do something like that and maybe a little bit more. They don't tend to animate. They tend to pay cash for these properties. You have to keep it really, really simple, but it is a great fallback position. So you wouldn't think that I would say, okay, we have to take care of elders, we have to take care of single moms, we have to take care of rich, I put that in quote marks, professional athletes, but we actually do. All right. So this is, and this is another picture of the detached garage in the backyard of Tiff's mom's place, and she went out back and took some pictures for me. You can see it has a little bit more distance from the back property line. This is the back of the detached garage. If you remember the one that I'm renovating in Belleville, it's right on the property line, but this seems to have a little breathing room here, which would make it easier for great designers like Dustin Poole to come up with something interesting for Tiff and her son. So the garage is about 20 by 24, so 480 square feet. Doesn't sound like very much, but remember that you can do very, very, very nice micro suites in 300 square feet. And in fact, at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, they've done micro suites. They're so small, they call them nano suites, that are as small as 140 or 145 square feet. All right, so 480 square feet is certainly satisfactory for Tiff and her son, in my opinion. And then I wrote back to Tiff and I said, Tiff, I had the crazy idea. You might want to do something similar to what I did at 140 William Street, which is add a micro suite in addition to the backyard garage, put that on Airbnb if you wanted to, and then maybe you could live for free. And I'm big on living for free, whether it's your principal residence with a microsuite in it, or a basement apartment, or a backyard coach house. I'm big with, and I'm good with that sort of thing. So that was my crazy idea that I sent her. And if you'll remember, this is the plan that Dustin helped me with that we're creating now in Belleville, where this is the existing detached garage, which will have this one bedroom. So it'll have one bedroom here on the right-hand side, have a great room with a living room, dining room, kitchen area. And then we're going to build this addition here, which is a self-contained microsuite. And if you remember, the most important thing here, in a way, there's two things that you should note. It has a connecting door, and it has its own ingress and egress from the outside. So that means, if you remember what I talked about a week or two ago, is that this unit could be a 2-bedroom Airbnb. It could be a 1-bedroom Airbnb and a microsuite on Airbnb. It could be a 2-bedroom long-term rental, and any combination in between. So it has tremendous flexibility. But I was thinking for Tiff and her son, maybe they would live in here, and Tiff would manage the Airbnb microsuite here, and perhaps generate enough revenues here to pay for the whole thing so that she could live for free. The other thing that I was looking at, and I've said this to you guys before, is that the more constraints there are on design, the more creative you have to be. The smaller the space, the more creative you have to be, and the more constraints you put on a design. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be a challenge, obviously, but it can lead to more interesting design. And so when I looked at this, I saw a tree here. I don't know what the condition of the tree is, but I thought maybe this tree could be saved, and there is a shed back here. And now, before I show you the next slide, you got to remember, I'm a lowly civil engineer, not an architect or an architectural technologist like Dustin, or an architect like Alex DiNardo. So I can't really draw, and here's the proof. All right, now I'm not sure if you, so Dustin, I'm going to put the test to you. You don't have to unmute yourself, but I want to see if you can actually understand what I'm trying to get at here. I'm such a bad drawer that I apologize to everybody on the call. But what I'm thinking is you renovate this to be a place for Tiff and Ryker to live, and then you add a kind of an L shape to it, if you will, where you add a microsuite here. And again, very similar to the Belleville situation, you have a door to the outside here, but you have a connecting door here. So it kind of overlaps, which means in the back, you have this sort of private patio area. So if this was an Airbnb, I would put a door probably in the back, and I develop a very private patio back here with that, and try and save that tree. All right, does it can you sort of see it in your mind's eye there, Dustin? Okay, thank you. So this would be Tiff and Ryker. This would be Tiff's Airbnb. There's the connecting door. And I said up here, shed and tree remain plus small, I didn't spell it right, super private area for the outdoor suite, which being outdoors is very important, especially in northern shelf cities in the United States and Canada, because we have about 9 months of winter. Then this is just another photograph that Tiffany took. Again, here's the garage back here. And you'll notice that the cars are in series like this, right? So there's cars parked one in front of the other. I think there's 3 in this laneway here. So there's plenty of room for parking, but I don't know about you guys, but I don't really like car jockeying. So one of the things I wanted to suggest to Tiffany is that she put pavers here. And again, I'm a terrible drawer, but if you can sort of see what I'm getting at, is you'd end up with parking like this. So you might be able to put a few cars here and not have to car jockey. So, if you're having an afternoon nap, somebody doesn't have to come wake you up to move the car, right? So I think that's a possibility. And I put some pictures here. This is one of my neighbors who has done some front yard parking. Now, in most towns and cities, you're not allowed to pave your front yard. So you can't just pave it with asphalt. Asphalt's relatively inexpensive. So these people have done a nice job here, and it's called hardscaping. In Ottawa, where I live, and in my neighborhood, you're allowed, I think, to do 50% of your front yard in hardscaping. And I like doing that because I don't really like cutting grass. I don't like watering grass. I don't like weeding and feeding it. It's resource intensive and it's time intensive, and it's probably not great for the environment either. I mean, if I have a little kid like Ryker, I want to have space of grass where he or she, your little kids can, or your grandkids in my case, can play soccer and stuff like that. But for a rental property, I really like the idea of not having to cut grass. So they did some nice pavers here, and you can get away with that in many jurisdictions by saying it's just landscaping, okay? But in fact, of course, it works for parking. Here's one that I did, and I did get into trouble for this one. So you can see there's a main driveway here, and I called this hardscaping, but it's obviously a parking spot for. We have a side yard apartment here. We have a lower level microsuite, and then we have a 3-bedroom house here. So I did put this in, and the bylaw officer gave me heck for. Some of my neighbors gave me heck for, but it's still there because I'm a stubborn sort of person. And here's another one of my coaching clients. He wasn't allowed to put front yard parking, so he did hardscaping. He put in these huge, large, I don't know if you can see them here, I circled them, these huge concrete hardscape panels, but of course you could park on the darn things, right? So that's what he did. And actually, one of my clients bought the property next door. So I have 2 clients right next to each other. When your practice gets big enough, clients start doing deals with each other and following each other around. And the idea was they're going to rip out this retaining wall and do something similar here because they need extra parking. So there's lots of creative solutions. All right. This is a solution, it's called grass mesh parking. It's very nice, it's very environmentally friendly. It's a bit more expensive to do. But the first time I ever saw grass mesh parking was when I visited my friend Phil Esposito in Tampa. Tampa Bay Lightning came into the National Hockey League at the same time as the Ottawa Senators. And I went down to see a game. I think the Senators were playing the Lightning, and I saw about 3,000 vehicles parked on a grass field. And I said to Phil Esposito, who was, I think he was actually the president of the Tampa Bay Lightning at the time, I said, Phil, if there's ever a rainstorm during one of your games, 3,000 cars are going to sink up to their, axles, in that field. And he said, no, come with me. So he took me over there, and it looked like a beautiful grass field, but in fact, it was grass mesh parking. You can drive a fire truck fully loaded over this, and it won't sink. All right, so it's a nice way of doing things too. For all of these solutions, by the way, where you're in the northern shelf cities of the United States and Canada, you have to snow blow. You can't plow it, right? I mean, if you plow it in the wintertime, you'll make a mess of it. So you have to use the snow blower. Now this is a look inside the garage, the existing garage. I'm not really sure what the ceiling height is, but it looked like it's in reasonable condition. It has a window here, and I'm sure something can be done with this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of this slide deck, and I thought today I'd go to the actual spreadsheet, okay? So what you're seeing now, and again, Dustin, if you give me the thumbs up, you can see the spreadsheet, okay? Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to check the chat box. Is everybody okay here? Somebody, Chiranjeev, says, do we need to get a building permit from the city of Ottawa to do hardscaping? The answer, in my opinion, is no. Let's see what else. Oh, I like this one from Michael. Many players don't follow the good advice or get taken advantage of and lose their money to managers and friends, 100%. And I think Michael was talking about professional athletes. All these athletes have, can't miss friends, can't miss ideas, and then they lose millions of dollars, on the next pub or the next crazy business idea. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike. All right, so let's get back to the spreadsheet. So these are all, look at this word, okay? Focus on this word for a moment, guesstimate. So Tiff asked me to look at her situation, do some analysis, and I think I'm going to talk to Tiff on Sunday afternoon when I should be watching NFL football. So I just put some guesstimates together, all right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So what are the guesstimates? I said, okay, she's going to add a microsuite for $125,000. And by the way, again, these are Canadian numbers, Hamilton, Ontario numbers. This is just a guesstimate on my part, but in many parts of the United States, they would be much less, all right? And they're different building code, certainly much better supply chain in most cases. So these are Canadian numbers, but in a way, it doesn't really matter because rents are higher as well. So, okay, so the microsuite might cost $125,000. She might spend $115,000 on the garage itself, renovating it for herself and her son. She has to run services. That means she has to connect to the storm sewers, to the sanitary sewers, and of course to water lines. She has to connect power. So that's going to cost some money. I just put in an allowance of $25,000, and I said maybe she ought to hire you, Dustin, for $4,500. So I put in something there for an architectural technologist. I love Dustin, and he's certainly licensed anywhere in Ontario. Maybe she needs some help from a planner or a lawyer to help her get her permit. Hopefully not, but maybe she might. So I just put in an allowance there. And then she might have to pay some fees and building permit fees, and I put another allowance in there. So I got a total of quite a lot of money to do this, $284,500. And then I put in a small contingency budget, and I said, okay, she should budget just under $300,000. That is a lot of money if you think about it. Maybe she could do it much better than that, much cheaper than that. But I didn't want to estimate low, partly because we're in a pandemic and everything is crazy expensive now, but also because I want to show you that it almost doesn't matter. Almost. All right. All right. So now let's look at what happens with that microsuite. You remember that microsuite? She might put it on Airbnb. So I'm just going to, this is sort of the income that she could generate from Airbnb from the microsuite. But let's just go down and see how I got that. All right. Yeah, here it is. So I assume $165 a night, but I suspect it's higher than that. If you remember that Tiff sent me some notes earlier, that a tiny little coach house in Hamilton on a long-term rental was like $2,400 a month, which is insane, but that's what it was, much smaller than the one we're talking about here. So I put in $165 a night for the summer, $135 a night in the winter. I put 70% occupancy in the summer and 50% occupancy in the winter. And so if you look at this number, if I click on this number like that, and I go up into the spreadsheet and I click in here, it shows you how to calculate it, right? It equals this cell times this cell times this cell plus this cell times this times this. Okay, what does that mean? It just means $165 a night times 180 nights times 70% plus $135 a night times 180 days times 50%, it gives you this number here. So I hit enter and that's what it does. Now, when you download these spreadsheets, you should version them. So you save it, and then you save it as a, as a copy, and then you fool around with the copy in case you screw it up. All right. So you can always go back to the original. Okay. Just so you have them. I want you to have them. I'll give you the link to download it in a minute. All right. So let's go back down here. Notice how everything is linked in my spreadsheet. So I'm just going to I'm going to just arbitrarily change this to $225 a night. Okay. So I changed it to 225, and now this finger is going to press the enter key. Okay. When I press the enter key, look what happens to this number here. Okay. So I'm going to hit the enter key now. Watch that number. Okay. It goes up a lot. Look what happens to the cap rate when I did that. Right. So now I'm going to hit Control Z. That means to reverse what I just did. So I'm going to hit Control Z. Let's see what happens now. All right, Control Z goes back to the cap rate of 11.6%. So you can see it's quite sensitive to this number. So if she can really get 225 instead of 165 in the summertime, that will make a significant difference to her return. Anyway, let's stick with the $32,940. And then you notice I put in a rent for the detached garage. In other words, Tiff might say, and Tiff's mom might say, well, why should you pay money to yourself? You should. You should treat even your principal residence as if it was a rental, because one day you might move out. Tiffany her situation might change for the better. She might move out, and then you would rent it. So I put in a rent of $1,600 per month, but I think that is low given what she showed me for something not even as good. That was $2,400 a month. So let's change that now. So I'm going to go $2,400, and oops, my typing is almost as bad as my drawing. So I'm going to put 2,400 here, and here goes the finger again, hit enter. And I want you to watch what happens to the cap rate. So keep your eye on this little baby. It goes way up, right? And you remember, I was hoping that you would not invest in something that had a cap rate less than 6%. Obviously, 11% is good, 13% is even better. So I'll hit Control Z again, and it just reverses back to the original. So her gross operating income is $52,000 a year, including the rent she's paying basically to herself and her mom. And her operating expenses, remember, that's not including Chiranjeev, not including mortgage, right? No principal, no interest. It's just as if she paid cash for this place, all right? So it's insurance, any utilities that the landlord has to pay, property management fees, vacancy allowance, repairs, maintenance, all of that stuff, OPEX, operating expenses, but nothing to do with mortgage. So it's around 34%. If in new construction, it might be 28%. In older stuff, it could be 44%. No, I'll just change that. If she could keep it to 28%, all right, I'll hit that. I'll hit the enter key. And again, her cap rate jumps up. I'm going to go back, Control Z. All right. So she has about $17,000 or $18,000 goes out the window for property taxes and everything else. She's left with $34,000 a year net operating income. How do you find the cap rate? Well, you guys are pros at this now. We said it would cost about $295,000 or $296,000. So we divide the net operating income by her cost, and it gives us, it gives us 11.6%. All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about financing, right? Because everybody always asks me about that. Her existing mortgage, or actually her mom's existing mortgage on the property is around $260,000. The current fair market value of the home, she hasn't had it appraised, but it'll come out around $700,000, $699 is shown here. So her existing loan to value is around 37%. So that's simply the mortgage divided by whatever the fair market value is. That's pretty good. It's quite low. So for Tiffany and her mother, they could put an 80% mortgage in place. I'm sure they could. So if you take 80% of $699, so I'll just click on this cell. So you take the fair market value times the loan to value, 80%, gives you the proceeds, $599,200, right? So she could have a mortgage of about $560,000 on this property. She owes $260,000, so she could take out of the house almost $300,000 in tax-free cash. And she could take that money and buy another property, or she could, it almost exactly equals this number, right? So she could, in fact, pay for it without having to write the check. This is the beauty of real estate. And one more thing I should add here is, and I'm just going to stop sharing the screen just for a moment, so you can see my handsome face again. This is one of the most important lessons I could teach all of you guys, the ones who are here live and the ones who will watch it recorded. And that is bankers, lawyers, accountants, and I think we have some accountants here, so I better be careful what I say. We might even have a couple of lawyers, so I better be doubly careful. But realtors, mortgage brokers, they'll all tell you, not all, but many of them will tell you, oh, you want to have a long amortization period, 30 years, your monthly payments will be lower. And then, of course, if you're a smart real estate investor, you say, yeah, they'll be lower, but how long does it take to pay off a 30-year mortgage? Let me think, 30 years. I'm 70, that means I'll be 100. Well, that's a little bit too long. And even for a young person like Dustin, or I always think of Alex, you being a young person, although you did tell me you're getting older now too. But even for a young person, and certainly for my kids, I tell them, let's shorten up that amortization period. And there's a couple of reasons why you might want to do that. There's more than probably two. One is that over the life of that mortgage, you'll pay less interest. Good. But the real reason why I like doing that is, again, those mortgage brokers and bankers and lawyers and accountants and realtors, they tell you, don't worry about the long amortization period. You can save up your money and make lump sum payments every year if you want to. You can pay down 20, 30,000 bucks. Well, I'm asking you guys, Chris, I'll ask you, how many of us actually pay down our mortgage with lump sums? What's your guess? Would you guess a lot?
Yep, 2%.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's very, very low. I've seen some numbers on it. I don't actually remember, so I put you on the spot without even knowing the answer. Sorry about that. But the fact is that almost nobody does, right? And so they're basically selling you, in my opinion, a bill of goods, right? A bill of fake goods. And so if you have a shorter amortization period, you are forced to make that payment every month. If your mortgage goes up from, say, $1,500 a month to $1,700 a month, you probably find a way to find that extra $200 every month. But if you had to find $5,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 at the end of the year to pay that mortgage down, you probably said, gee, I really wanted that new iPad, you know, and my car is getting old. I want a new car, and that trip to Cuba is just too appealing. So you just don't do it. So it's a way to force yourself to save. Amortization is the best way, in my opinion, to fund the next thing you do. And you can see that Tiffany's mom has already figured that out, because she's paid down her mortgage to $260,000. She can easily get $300,000 out of her home. And if she wanted to, I suppose she could, you know, she could blow it on a trip around the world, but I hope she won't. I hope she'll help Tiffany develop the backyard garage. All right, let's keep going. So amortization, in my opinion, is your friend. And what we do is we shorten the amortization period as much as we can, as long as we're still cash flow positive. All right, so we don't want to increase the mortgage so much that we're losing money on our properties. So I have, you know, some properties of my own where I have like a 3-year amortization period. You know, those mortgages will be gone in no time. I have some which are 11 years, but I also have some that are 20 and 25 years because they just don't yet have the cash flow to support it. But as soon as they get the cash flow, if I can animate it, I'm shortening up those amortization periods, and not just because I'm older, right? Because that's forced savings. It's a way to find more money for the next project. All right. Now, the other possibility, and I really like this, as long as you, again, are a disciplined person, I really like the home equity line of credit. All right. So rather than maybe replacing her mortgage with another mortgage, when there might be fees and break fees involved, what she could do is she could, you know, call up her mortgage broker, and she could probably put a $300,000 home equity line of credit on her building in a couple of weeks. And the nice thing about a HELOC is, you know, you can draw the money as you need it, and you can pay it back as you want, right? So I have a number of HELOCs, and I'm very disciplined. So if I make some money and I have an extra $30,000, I will pay down the HELOC, you know, rather than just go to Curacao or whatever and enjoy myself. So I have the discipline to do it. But if you don't, a mortgage is better, because they'll put you on a monthly plan and you're going to make that payment, right? All right, so what is the marginal cost of a mortgage bump up? So what I did was I figured out what the cost is for that mortgage. And I'll just go through it again. I'll go over here. So how do you do that on a spreadsheet? First, you hit the equal sign, and you notice it shows right away up here in the left-hand corner of Excel. And I'm not very good on the Apple version of it. So if you're running Apple, you'll have to figure it out. So it shows all kinds of all kinds of functions here: payment, principal payment, internal rate of return, how to sum things, average, all kinds of cool things. They got all kinds of functions in Excel. But here, all we need is payment. So I clicked on that. And I just assumed that she could get a HELOC or a mortgage bump up at 3.5%. So I clicked on that, and it shows up, rate is 3.5%. Number of periods, I said 25 years. So I'm going to put 25 in here, shows up here. Present value, well, it starts at $299,200 for this, you know, this bump up. Future value is 0. Hopefully you're going to pay it down to nothing. And type, it's asking for type: 0 for Canadian, because Canadian mortgages are different from American, and 1 if you're an American. So I'm going to put 0 in here because Tiff is in Canada. And then I'm going to hit OK. And it shows this is going to cost just over $18,000 a year. The negative sign means it's money going out the door. So I hit the equal sign here. I click on this cell. I put the divide sign in at the top. You can sort of see it, and divide by 12 months. And that gives me the same number as I got here. So that's how I got that number, right? Excel is your friend. You should learn how to use it if you don't already know. All right, so now let's look at this number. So her cost for this extra bit of mortgage is going to be around $1,500 a month under these assumptions. You remember her net operating income was $34,000 a year. If you divide that by 12, that works out to just under $2,900 a month. So she has very good cash flow coverage, very positive, right? Now, what is Tiffany's effective rent? All right. So what it is remember I said she should pay $1,600 to her mom or to herself, basically to the two of them. And she's generating cash flow from that little microsuite Airbnb of about $1,300 a month. So Tiff could live in her own backyard apartment with her son for around $245 a month. Right? And if we go back down here and maybe let's just assume that she does get the 225 in the summer. All right, I'm going to change that to 225. I'm going to hit the enter key again. Now her cost for living in her own backyard coach house is a negative amount of money. That's what I mean by living for free. Okay, everybody's clear on that concept. I'm going to hit Control Z again, just because I want to go back to that. Now, assuming that Tiffany gets back on her feet, which I'm sure she will, and has great success in the future, she may move out. Now, from mom's point of view, her mother, has a great addition to her retirement income when Tiff and Ryker move out, right? She's going to add almost $3,000 a month to her income, right? That's after she's paid off the mortgage. Now let's go back here one more time and look at what happens when the amortization period goes up. So, sorry, goes down, which means that you're paying off your mortgage faster, all right? So let's assume instead of 25 years, Tiff and her mom says, let's see if we can pay this off over 15 years, okay? So I'm gonna hit the enter key. Let's watch what happens to the cost of the mortgage, all right? So there, it goes up by about $660 or $600 a month. So it is a significant increase, but if Tiffany could afford to pay $900 a month in rent for her part of this backyard coach house, then they could retire this thing in 15 years. That's a really good thing if you can do it. If you can't afford it, that's another thing. But if we go back down here and I change this to 225 again, okay, it means she's back under $500 in rent and retiring her mortgage in 15 years. This is why spreadsheets are so important for real estate investors. Whether you're doing a huge project or a small one, Dustin, I know you're looking for investment property in your neck of the woods. I want you to learn how to do this stuff. Now I'm going to go Control Z and I'm going to go Control Z again, so I've returned it back to its original shape. So I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat box. Was it clear at all? Did I lose everybody? Oh, Shirley, thank you very much. Michael gave me a thumbs up. You know, you do get the replay, so if you have to go through it again, and you've all got my email address, you've probably been getting too many emails from me anyway, but you know, I really want you to be a spreadsheet guru. I'm self-taught, and I don't think anybody ever showed me how to use a spreadsheet. I just opened it up 25 years ago, I guess, and started banging away at it. And I'm pretty good at it. There's people way better than me, but I'm good enough to do what I need to do to teach you something and to make sure that I'm making decisions that are hopefully good decisions. Now, decisions are made based basically on three things: your heart, your head, and your gut. Okay, your head is all about, does this make sense? Can I animate the place? Does my spreadsheet look responsible? Can I get a return on this investment? That's your head. It's all about calculation. Your heart has to be in it, because if you're not passionate about what you do, I don't care what it is, whether it's real estate or dance, whether it's art, right, or coding, or whatever it might be, being an architect. If you're not passionate about it, you're probably going to suck at it, right? Like, don't do things that you don't really like doing if you can avoid it. I mean, everybody has to do stuff that they don't really like doing. I'm no different. There's a lot of grind. I mean, I got to pay my income taxes, that's not a lot of fun. I got to pay my HST. That's not fun either. But, you got to do those things. So yeah, we all have to do, Joe jobs for sure. But the stuff that I do in teaching and the stuff I do in real estate, I am passionate about it, and I want you to be too. So that's your heart. And then your gut. It's like when you find a girlfriend or a boyfriend, husband or wife, partner, whatever, a spouse. you know, there might be many things about them that you like, but there's something inside you saying, no, I'm not sure about this. That's your instinct. So when you're looking at a property, it is no different than thinking about asking a girl out for a date or a boy out for a date or whatever. Your instincts have to be in alignment with your heart and your head. And I've made the mistake sometimes of not paying enough attention to my instincts. And every time I've done that, I made a bad decision. So heart, head, and gut, okay? Let's just see. Let's see, Alex says, given a large chunk of cash, would you use it to pay off a mortgage or use it to go forward with another project? Alex, that is a fantastic question. Really good question. The answer is yes and no. It depends. That's a horrible answer, but I'll explain. So real estate is a bit, and entrepreneurship, I'm sure everybody on the call knows this. Entrepreneurship is full of gray ideas, gray areas is what I meant to say. You know, I was talking about your heart, your head, and your gut, right? All being in alignment before you make a decision. Everything that human beings do, in my opinion, is ultimately an act of faith. When Ruben and Mary Lou bought a mini storage business that had 0 clients, not $1 of revenue, nobody else wanted to touch it. In a year, Mary Lou had that whole thing full, and the value, I don't know if it doubled or tripled, but something like that, maybe tripled. So yeah, they did some analysis, you know, and they're passionate about the mini storage business and they're really good at it. They're based in North Vancouver, but they're all over the place now. But ultimately, I think Ruben and Mary Lou, you would just give me the thumbs up if you agree. It was an act of faith, really, wasn't it? At the end, Mary Lou, it was an act of faith that you could figure things out. And Alex, I've seen entrepreneurs in a position in a corner where you swear to God, those guys are going bankrupt. There's no way. Entrepreneurs are constantly pulling rabbits out of the hat, going, hey, look at this. So with real estate, in the early days of real estate, in my opinion, you stack up as much debt as you can and you buy as much property as you can, as long as it makes sense. You know, so if you could buy one property that had a 10% cap rate, that's great. You're going to make some money. But if you could buy 10 properties that have a 10% cap rate, by adding a whole lot of debt to your portfolio, then your cash flow at some point is going to just blow up, right? Because you start to pay down your debt, right? Your cash flow starts to go up as you animate these properties. So owning 10 properties or 100 properties, or some of my clients own 300 or 3,000. I've got one that owns 34,000 rental units, right? In the early days, they stack up on debt like crazy and buy as many properties as they can, provided that the cap rates are responsible. If you're buying properties like one of the ones we looked at in this course that has like a 1.99% cap rate, buy more and more of those, you're going to go broke. Do you understand, Alex? But if you buy properties, in fact, I think that was your property with your brother, sorry. But Alex, if you buy properties like the one that we're talking about with Tiff and Ryker and her mom, Tiff's mom, that has a 11% or 12 or 13% cap rate, and you buy lots of those, then the debt will go away and you will make far more money. So it's a bit of a combination of both. And then when you get to the size of portfolio that you're happy with, a lot of my female clients want, 5 or 6 properties. They want $10,000 or $12,000 a month in independent income through real estate, and they're good. They want 5 properties or 10 or 6 properties. So if there's duplexes, they have 10 or 12 tenants. They can handle it themselves. They don't need a property manager. They can do it on their own. And they've got 10 or 12, sometimes $15,000 a month in independent income after paying their mortgages. They go, I'm good, man. This is fantastic. And it allows me to do other things. And I've got some guys who say, oh, I want $900,000 a month, right? $1 million a month. So it just depends. But when you get to the portfolio size, whether it's 5 or 6 properties or a few hundred or a few thousand, you stop buying, you shorten the amortization period, you drive down debt, and you don't buy an HLT. Okay, there you go. All right, let's keep going. All right, so we've done some work on the numbers there. Let's go back to the slide deck. Here, okay, so I better put this in the chat box. This is the link to Tiff's spreadsheet. So if you guys can do this, and I'll send it to you anyway, but it would help me if you wouldn't mind copying it out of, copying it out of the chat box. So you'll have, you can just download it at any time. All right, so I'll go back in here now. All right. How are we doing for time? Oh, doing okay. All right, so we've gone through all of this. Okay, now Tiff asked me some questions, which are good, or maybe it wasn't Tiffany's, one of the other students. You guys have been great with questions. I really like it. I'm trying to do a detailed cost analysis, and I'm struggling somewhat as to how to get accurate estimates of costs, especially these days. So this wasn't Tiffany, this was somebody else, might have been Colette. The analysis I'm working on is both for microsuites as well as an eightplex. Any tips? Well, we already talked about this, that costs for labor and materials are so unpredictable now, and inflation is so high that making definitive budget estimates is really, really difficult. So I have gone back over the last 2 years to an old style of contract, which is based on time and materials. So I work with lots of contractors on the properties I own, where we agree on an hourly rate and a profit margin, and they're going to bill me their cost of materials and their cost of their time plus a defined profit margin, and they're just going to work on my projects until they're done. Now, that is a risky proposition, because you're going to say, well, wait a second, Bruce, they could just keep working on it for 10 years and keep billing you. So the number one thing in my life is the word trust. Trust between yourself and your family, trust with hopefully your coach, your realtor, your lawyer, all the people around you, your children, whatever. So I work with contractors who I just say, hey, go and build that. And they do, and they bill me time and materials. If I ask them today for a fixed price, it would de-risk the project, that is true. But they'd also have to put in such an enormous, sort of delta, because of they don't know any better than me if lumber prices are going to triple, that it ends up, at least in my experience, costing me more. So, but you have to make up your own decisions on this, but the days of gross maximum price and fixed price contracts, for me, are over until we have a more predictable environment. When that is going to be, I don't know. So that was my answer to that. Now, so that was the bad news, that costs are much higher, but the good news is that rents both in the United States and Canada have been going up. And valuations have been going up at an incredible, really actually alarming rate, right? So that's good news, I guess, if you're an owner like we are, right? And the other good news about time and materials contract is you never end up in an argument with your contractors. You don't. If you come in and say, hey, listen, this is a problem. Like we just found a problem this morning in one of our buildings. We didn't put in a janitor's closet, so it's a multi-story building. What, you're going to carry, buckets of water up to wash the floor? I mean, it was ridiculous. So so we're going to tell our contractor, our general contractor Monday, hey, don't forget to put a janitor closet on the second or third floor, so we can have we can keep our hallways clean, right? So you get lots of flexibility with this. And the other thing you don't get is you don't get into arguments, and you don't get liens on your properties, right? Construction liens are like having a nuclear bomb go off. If you have an argument with a contractor, he or she has pretty much more leverage on you than you do on him or her. If you get into an argument with your plumber and you don't pay him or her, and they put a lien on your property, you can't mortgage that property, you can't get your construction draw, you can't sell that property, you can't remortgage it, you can't do anything without dealing with that lien. That is a really big problem, right? So if you get into a dispute with somebody like Dustin and you don't pay his architectural technology fees, right? He can lien the project. And once he does that, he has the hammer on you in most cases. I mean, there's some ways to deal with it, but it goes beyond the scope of this course to deal with it. So you want to keep you only want to work with constructors that you trust and suppliers that you trust, but you also don't want to have arguments with them. All right. Now, for Tiffany and her mom, there will be some questions here. I believe that they're in the main house. There already is a basement apartment. I don't know if it's a legal basement apartment or not, but there already is one. And I get this question all the time. can you have a backyard coach house and an in-home apartment? And you go to more and more cities and towns. I'm talking about Ontario now, and the local planner, the planner at the desk, he or she is doing the best that they can, but they'll say no. You can either have a coach house or you can have an in-home apartment, not both, but they're wrong. Ontario Bill 108 says, yes, you can have both. So don't take no for an answer. And I actually put the bill in here for you guys, anybody living in Ontario. In June of 2019, the Ontario government changed the rules. They passed Bill 108. I'll just read this section here in yellow. The subsection is reenacted. This is the way they write legislation. To require policies authorizing additional residential units by authorizing 2 residential units in a house, it means kind of a duplex, and by authorizing a residential unit in a building or structure ancillary to a house. That means a backyard coach house. So it's very clear what has to happen here. And cities and towns, townships and counties have to comply with PPS, provincial policy statements. They have to come into alignment with them. So don't take no for an answer. All right, I'm going to go back in time. This is my dad, Professor O.J. Firestone. And he was a professor at the University of Ottawa, where I taught as well. And I was living quite happily in Australia. I was getting my PhD in urban economics from the Australian National University in Canberra when my dad came to see me, it's got to be over 30 years ago, and said, Bruce, my business in Ottawa is not doing very well. Can you come back to Ottawa and give me a hand? So being a good son, I said, oh, okay. But I was planning to live in Australia. My oldest son was born there, and we only had 1 kid then, but we have 5 now. So I come back to Ottawa, from Canberra, and I find out that my dad and I think 3 partners have bought or have built 6 giant warehouses of like 45,000 square feet with 20-foot clear ceiling heights, no columns, column free, and they had roller disco rinks in this thing. I had no, I don't even know if we had disco music in Australia, but anyway, I didn't know what roller disco was, but anyway, so I say, well, I'll go and have a look at them, Dad. And I go there and I rent some roller skates. I'd never roller skated in my life, but anyway, rented some roller skates. And you go round and round in this huge barn, warehouse like this. Donna Summer's music is playing, disco music. And there's, flashing lights and the disco ball, all that cool stuff. And then after a few minutes, the music stops and everybody stops. So I stopped. And then they start the music up again, and you go in the opposite direction. So I did that for about an hour, and I thought, oh my God, this is boring. So I went to see my dad. I said, Dad, I don't really like this business, but I like the real estate business. And he said, what do you have in mind, Bruce? Well, I'm going to go talk to the 3 partners, and I'm going to trade the half ownership in the roller disco rinks for the half ownership in the real estate. So I went to see the 3 fellas that were my dad's partners. And I said, we're going to make this trade if you want. And they said, oh, Bruce, you're a young guy, because I was young once. And we're going to take advantage of you. This is a terrible idea on your part. Roller disco is cash cow, and real estate's kind of boring. It doesn't make much money. And I said, it's okay. You keep the cow, I'll keep the real estate. So we made that deal. About 20 months later, they went bankrupt. I mean, when a fad dies, you couldn't pay a teenager to go to a roller disco ring. I mean, that fad just friggin' died. And they went out of business. And now I had 6 warehouses completely empty, huge ones too. I mean, 45, 46, 47,000, like a whole acre under roof. But this is just, this is the 1980s. This is just when the tech scene was getting going. And Alex DiNardo, who's worked for tech companies, and some of the other people, Chris and others who've worked for tech companies, know that if they can, they like to be on one level. So the CEO or the chief operating officer can wander around, and he can see the coders and the product managers and the marketers and the accounting people and the finance people. It's called managing by wandering around. The theory was that the most profitable meetings you will ever have are those water cooler accidental meetings for 2 or 3 minutes. So within a few months, I had filled up these 6 warehouses with really high-paying tech clients who were paying outrageous amounts of money. And guess what happened to the value of those of that real estate, right? Went way up. So I started to learn, yeah, there's an animation thing that's going on back in, I think it was 1983. So this is me when this is my youngest son and my dad. And the company was called Terrace Investments Limited, and I was the chair and chief executive officer of that company. Wasn't I nice looking? Hey, ladies? You can give me a thumbs up if you want. I asked for that. So this is what happened to the roller disco rinks. We had 6 of these. So you can see, hey, Michael, there's more numbers for you. 6 of these 45,000 square foot buildings. The cost back then, including land, was around $37 or $38 million. There was quite a bit of mortgage debt on it. And I rented it out to these tech companies for $18 per square foot triple net. Commercial leases are different from residential. These tech companies would pay their base rent or the minimum rent, plus they'd pay their utilities, plus they'd pay their operating costs, plus their share of property taxes. So it gave me net operating income from these 6 buildings of about $4.8 million. The properties were valued at an 8% cap rate, which meant that our cost to build them was around, including land, was around 37 or 38 million. I got them reappraised for just over $60 million. I put a new 75% loan to value mortgage in place for 45 million. And I put $13.4 million of tax-free cash in my jeans, or our jeans, my family's jeans, after 2 years. That's how I got my start in real estate. And that's why I stayed in Ottawa, because I had a few $1 million to spend on that. I thought, I was 28. I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm enjoying this. So then, just to tell you my sad tale, the company became a $1 billion company, and life was pretty good. I got, I had more kids and had the nice home and all the good stuff that goes with it. And I thought, I'd like to have a big home run. So I thought, what am I going to do next? So I asked myself the question, what does Toronto, which is a much bigger city, have that Ottawa doesn't have? And the answer to that was, of course, they have an NHL team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so I came up with a simple plan. I kind of alluded to this, I think, in the first election, to bring back the Senators. By the way, the Ottawa Senators had played in the NHL. They were an original team when the NHL was first formed in, I think, 1917. And they played until 1933. And unfortunately, in the Great Depression of the 1930s, they weren't financially viable, and they moved to St. Louis and then folded. So the Senators, bring back the Senators. They had won 9 Stanley Cups, which was pretty cool. And I said, we're going to bring back the Ottawa Senators. Yep, bring back the Senators. And I came up with a very simple plan, which was to buy 600 acres of land. You can see it here. This is in the west end of Ottawa. There's a major highway here. There's a new interchange here. And the idea was to put a new arena, which you can see here where my cursor is moving around, in the middle of this, and an NHL team, and drive the value of the property that we owned up. So this was all vacant land. So I bought 600 acres of farmland for $12,000 an acre, so about $7.2 million. I put this arena, which is now called the Canadian Tire Center, in the middle of it, and the land is now trading for anywhere between $875,000 an acre and $1.1 million. So that land is probably worth today about $600 million, maybe a bit more than that. So the idea was, if I go back, sorry, to this slide, the idea was to keep 100 acres here, where I would build a building and the parking lot and everything else, and then sell off the other land, right? So and this works, by the way, whether you're just building a backyard coach house or a major community facility. One of the reasons why you want to invest in a tight geography is it's easier to manage those properties. But the other reason is, if you do a good job, you will drive up property values in the area, in the neighborhood. That's a good thing. And if you have a lot of properties in one little neighborhood and you've driven the value of the whole neighborhood up, well, that's good for you, right? So it's a tight geography. People sometimes will invest in Alberta and Arkansas and New Mexico and 7 or 8 other places. They drive themselves crazy trying to manage it. Plus, they don't get any of the benefit that I'm showing here. Okay, so whether it's just a small portfolio or a bigger portfolio, same principle. So the idea was to drive the value of the land up, which obviously worked, and sell off the surplus land, put that cash in a, one of these armored trucks, take it down to the NHL and give it to the National Hockey League. And in exchange, I would get a National Hockey League franchise. This was me in the middle here with Cyril Leader, Randy Sexton, Terry Innocent, Jimmy Steele. This is the Terrace Investments. This is the core group. And you see, we're not very big. But if you have a small group of very, very committed and talented people, maybe there's only 15 or 20 in this picture, you can do a lot of damage, right? These were very, very talented people. Now, I'll just tell you a quick story about bidding for a National Hockey League franchise. The night before we actually got the franchise, there was this like 600 or 700 person dinner, and there were a lot of people bidding for expansion franchises back then: Ottawa, Hamilton, Houston, Milwaukee, Seattle, Portland, Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, probably a few I'm forgetting. So all these bidders, myself, I had 120 people down there, and the other bidders didn't have as many, but I had quite a few. We were all down there telling the NHL Board of Governors why they should invest in our community, in this case, Ottawa. And one of the members of the Board of Governors came up to me at this big dinner and said, put his face, a few inches from mine, and said, "Bruce, there's just one thing I want to tell you." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You will never, ever, ever get an NHL franchise in Ottawa." Whoa. I just spent $7.2 million on land, $2.5 million on development fees and other things that I was working on. I had signed up 15,000 season ticket holders. I mean, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to find a new hometown. So I said to him, "Look, sir, I think you should reconsider. I think the NHL should give franchises to people who really love the league, who love hockey, who love NHL hockey, and who will take care of the franchise." He said, "Well, you heard what I said." And he walks away. Whoa. So I went back to my table and I sat down. This is a picture taken of me just right after this. And I'm sitting there at my table, and Cyril Leader and Randy Sexton and some others come up to me and they said, "What's wrong, Bruce?" I said, "Oh, everything's good." For the guys on the call, when you're under a lot of stress, your voice might go up a couple of octaves. So I said, "Oh, I'm fine, everything's good." But I felt, wow, I'm gonna have to find another place to live. But the next morning, sure enough, the NHL made an announcement that franchises had been given to the cities of Ottawa and Tampa. And I asked the president of the National Hockey League right after he told me we had won the thing. I said, what was the vote? And he said it was unanimous. I said, "It was unanimous. Everybody voted for Ottawa and for Tampa." He said, "Yes, everybody." I said, "Oh my gosh, we got them all." And one of the things that I noticed was there were only two people. Sorry, I'll go back to this slide. There were only two of the bidders, of all those bidders that I mentioned, there were only two bidders who kept on lobbying, and pressing for a franchise: myself and Phil Esposito for Tampa. Because after I recovered from my shock of you'll never, ever, ever get a franchise, I thought to myself, well, maybe that's one vote I won't get, but I'm going to go out and get the rest of them, darn it. And the next morning, I'm up early anyway. If you look at my emails, you'll know that. I went down to, this was in a big hotel in Florida. I went down to where the Board of Governors were having breakfast, and I kept on lobbying right up until they shut the door at 0800. And I look around the breakfast room, and the only other person still, pushing for a franchise was Phil Esposito. All right, so I get back to Ottawa, and a few weeks later, I get a call from this member of the Board of Governors, and he says, "Bruce, do you remember what I sent you the night before you got the franchise?" I said, "I absolutely do. I'll never forget it." He said, "I want to tell you what we did. Myself and two other members of the Board of Governors decided to go up to every franchise bidder and say the same thing. You will never, ever, ever get a franchise in Seattle, in Portland, in Houston, Milwaukee, whatever. We wanted to see how you guys would react." And the only two people who didn't get mad, who kept on pushing forward, was you and Phil. And we decided those are the people we wanted to give franchises to. We only give franchises to people we like and trust. Right? There's that word again, trust. So I said, I'm really glad you told me that, and I feel better. Anyway, so I get back to Ontario. This was the premier at the time. His name was Bob Ray. And Mr. Ray was the NDP premier of the province of Ontario. And he decided that he would prefer the franchise in Hamilton, not in Ottawa. And the reason for that is they had a lot of members of the legislature elected from the Hamilton-Wentworth area, and only one, I think, from Ottawa. So he decided that he was going to oppose the rezoning of our lands. He was going to say no to us being able to build our new arena. And I got a call from Phil Esposito. So Phil was a wonderful hockey player and a very good man. And he said, Bruce, how was your reaction when you came back to Ontario? And I said, well, first, how was your reaction when you, in Florida? He said, oh, it was great. The state governor called me and said, if there's anything I could do for the Tampa Bay Lightning, let me know. My door is always open. He said, well, how was your reaction? And I said, well, we got a lawsuit from our government, right? So I had to spend $3.5 million on a 13.5-week OMB, that's a tribunal, hearing, planners, lawyers, etc. I was on the stand for 3.5 days of grueling cross-examination. Fortunately, we won the hearing. So, we battled, I've been battling government for a long time, right? And it was very unfair in my opinion. But then something else happened. Our first year salaries were about $6.5 million, and they went up in the next few years to $85 million. And the Canadian dollar went from, I think, 89 or 90 cents when we bought the franchise to 62 or 63 cents to the US dollar. And sure enough, the Sens went bankrupt, and that billion-dollar company I had built went away, right? Ottawa, you can read it here, Ottawa Center's bankrupt. So what do you do when that happens? And good things happen to, bad things happen to good people. And it is what it is. In the next couple of years, and this is why I got to know you, Alex DiNardo, I ended up with 10 jobs. I swear to God, I had 10 jobs. I always said, 5 or 6 jobs, but then I actually put this slide together for you. I went back to school to get my real estate broker license. I went and became a prof at the Israeli School of Architecture and Urbanism, the Sprott School of Business. I became a real estate investor again. I became a real estate coach and mentor. I became chair of an international consulting group. I became vice chair of CIRA, which was in charge of the .ca domain. I became a senior vice president for a tech company. I went out on the speaking trail. Maybe I can't do anything else, but I can talk. And I started teaching in Hyper Island in Stockholm, right? I taught digital data strategy in Stockholm. I had 10 jobs because I had 5 kids and a wife and a mother-in-law to support, right? And I take that very seriously. Here's a picture of me after this. This is a picture taken in Stockholm, right, when I was teaching there. So I went to my wife and I said to her, I said, you've been a wonderful, wonderful partner. But if there was ever a time you wanted to leave the marriage, this would probably be the right time. I said, you've been a wonderful partner, but obviously I've let you down. She didn't think about it very long. She said, no, I'm sticking with you, which I really appreciate, because that was, that was a big change for, I lost the house, and, my kids had everything, the cook and the nanny and all the things they might want. And then all of a sudden we were living in an apartment with nothing. But she said, no, I'm sticking, which you can imagine how much that means to me. But she said, your plan, Bruce, your financial plan sucks. And I said, absolutely, it does. It was terrible. So she said, maybe you should go and see some financial planners. I said, good idea. We got to have a better plan. Because, at that time I was 54, no spring chicken, right? So I went to see 3 of the top financial planners in my hometown now, which is Ottawa. And I think their advice sucked even worse than my plan. One, I don't remember the first 2, but the third one was trying to sell me a life insurance policy, which would cost me $10,000 a month. It was more than I was making. I was completely broke. And And what he didn't tell me is that he would get an $80,000 commission up front if I was stupid enough to actually sign that thing, which I was not. So I said to Dawn, my wife Dawn, I said, oh my gosh, I thought my plan was terrible, and it was, but theirs was worse. So I made up my own. So this plan that I'm sharing with you is hard fought, guys. I mean, I worked every day for 13 straight years, except for Christmas Day. So I call it a new pin, excuse me, new pin plan, new pin. It just stands for New Era Financial Plan. I just made it up, excuse me. And it's made up of 8 pillars. You can read it for yourself here. Have a real estate investment portfolio, which I had before and I screwed up. Have some kind of a cash reserve. Have some kind of a personal business that you can run. In my case, it's my coaching practice. Don't buy life insurance, but you can buy, if you're a young person, you can buy term insurance. If you're not a smoker and you're reasonable health, you can buy term insurance for not very much money to protect your family. You can have some kind of independent pension plan if you want. But the next thing I think is very important, complexity is the enemy of success. So whatever you do, whether it's a business or real estate, keep it simple. And then find a way to pass it on to your children and your grandchildren, if that's important to you. And try and get back to your community, which I'm doing, I hope, by doing some teaching and coaching. So just going back to this, number one, real estate investment. So there I had no money. None. My brother, who's a very successful criminal lawyer in Vancouver and Victoria, sent me an envelope with $500 of cash in it. That's how broke I was, to help me out, which his name's Peter. I'm very grateful to him. So what did I do? I went out and I bought a townhouse. I had no money. So we're going to talk financing again. I had no money. I had a net worth that was very negative. So I bought this townhouse. It's near the Ottawa River, so it's a nice area. Here's the front of it. Here's the back of it. On the left-hand side is the back of it. So it's, I think, 3 or 4 stories. The front is here. It's at Ambleside Drive. So it's close to light rail, or bus stop. So it's close to, it's close to the water. It's close to light rail. It's close to shopping. Everybody likes Farm Boy, which is big in our area. It's close to a beach. I like that. It's not far from downtown. You can get downtown in 11 minutes, which is pretty good. So I like a lot of things about this townhouse. So I put this together, and I'm going to get out of this just for a moment. And I did another spreadsheet. I'm going to put this in the chat box for you guys here in a sec. So again, you can download it for yourself. There's quite a bit of numbers in there, Michael. And I'll go back and make this screen a little bigger. So it's in the chat box for you guys if you want it. So I put down my 10-step plan. I think there's like a 10-step plan if you're an alcoholic. Hopefully everybody is able to manage those kinds of things okay. But this is my 10-step plan. So unfortunately, the Sens went bankrupt. I lost everything, including a 10-figure real estate portfolio. My net worth was negative. And here's the thing. If something bad happens to you, you have 3 days to get over it. That's it. First day, you can be sad. I'm sure I was. Second day, you can be mad. It's a normal thing. You're angry at the world. But the third day, get up, get some exercise, get on with the rest of your life, which is what I did. Then I took on 10 jobs because you gotta pay your bills. Then I consulted three top financial planners, and they all were terrible. So I developed my own new pin plan. And then I went back to really the only thing I know how to do, which is real estate investing. And today, here we are, 16 years later, I have an 8-figure portfolio, right? So it's not 10 figures, but it's not 0 either. And then I wanted to bring, in terms of giving back to society, maybe in a little bit, I wanted to bring animation business modeling to real estate. Because before I got involved, I don't think there were, I don't know if there were any people doing business models I mean, there's tech business models and service business models, but I didn't see any of real estate. And I've been specializing in that since I got into this business. And then you guys, after this course is over in about another, 45 minutes, we got more time. You're my disciples now, I hope. And you'll go out and you'll help other people too, especially as you get older. There's a lot of young people on the call, and your job is to to help other people too. I'd like you to do that. At least think about it. All right, so I'm going to go back because I think Michael liked it, and I think I did too. I'm going to go back and see if I got that. If I got that other spreadsheet here. All right, so yeah, so there's my spreadsheet. This is the one you can download. So this is the Ambleside townhouse story. So it was listed for sale for about $400,000. Okay, Chris, just give me the thumbs up. You can see the spreadsheet, okay? Okay, thank you. And you got to remember, I had $500 in cash for my brother. That was my whole wad, if you know what I mean. Look in your wallet, there's $500. And this was weird. I'll highlight that for you. This was strange. It had been DOM, stands for days on market, over 300 days. And I thought, oh my God, I can't imagine why it would be 300 days on the market. So I went to see it. And as soon as the door opened, I realized why. The lady who owned it was a nice lady, an elderly lady. Her first name was Joan, but she was a hoarder. I don't know if you've ever been in a place where a hoarder lives, but she had 6 or 7 cats, and she had piles of what I would call garbage everywhere, and the smell was overwhelming. And so obviously people would come, a nice young couple would come to see the townhouse, and probably they wouldn't even go in. But, desperate times makes for desperate measures. And I'm not too proud. I said, can I look through it? And she said, sure. And so I walked through it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I think this place could be really nice if it could be emptied out and if it didn't smell like kitty litter and worse. And so I understood why it had been up for sale. So I made an offer for $240,000. You got to remember, I had no money. I had $500, but I still made an offer. Are you hearing me, Dustin? I made an offer, $240,000. Her realtor said, well, this is a joke. Other townhouses at that time were selling for $400,000 or more. This is embarrassment. I'm going to advise my client to turn it down. And she did. The realtor gave it back to me. Reject it. So I said, okay, well, I didn't get that one. On to the next one. But I kept an eye on that townhouse, and the 300 days became 360. So 2 months later, I went back. And the best time in northern cities, like Canada and like Ottawa, northern shelf cities, and like Connecticut, whatever, best time to make offers, November, December, January, February, right? It's cold, it's dark, everybody wants to commit suicide. So I went back, and this time I said to the realtor, I want to be there and present the offer. Oh, no, you don't have to be there. I said, no, I don't have to be there, but I have the right to be there. Obviously, you're her representative, you can be there, but I'm going to make the presentation. So she, okay. So I sat with Joan, who was a very nice lady, and I told her my sob story. I told her my sob story. But then I said to her, Joan, the reason why I think you should sell it to me isn't just because I need some help, but because you can hand over your keys and walk out. I'm not going to ask you to, for broom swept condition. You don't have to throw out any of your precious stuff. Every 6-year-old Kleenex boxes with used tissues in were precious to her. And I said, just, get on with it. She was in her 80s. Get on with the rest of your life. You want to move. This is the time to do it. I'll just walk away. Give me the keys. Walk away. And the realtor said, well, you have to improve your offer. Your offer is insulting. And I said, yeah, okay, I can do better. So I upped the offer by $1,250. And Joan said, I accept. And her realtor was really upset, but I don't care about her realtor. And so she accepted the offer, $241, $250. And I'm going to tell you how I financed it in a minute. But once we got a hold of the property, it took me and my 2 boys and a couple of other helpers over 3 weeks to remove tons of garbage. But once we did, it was that place filled up with light and air. It was beautiful. You'll see pictures of it in a second. And we did some renovations over the next few months We did it in 3 months. Today would probably take 6 or 9 months. I'll just correct that. Oops. Told you I typed it was terrible. And we did the rentals for $55,000 today, probably at least double that. So the total cost of this building was $241,250 plus some land transfer tax, plus some closing costs, plus some renovation. It came out about $296, and I got it reappraised almost right away for $400,000. Now, how much money did I need to close this deal? Well, I had the $500 from my brother, and I needed 20% down because I had, even though my credit rating was in the toilet, I got an equity lender to agree to give me 80% loan to value. So there are equity lenders out there and there are A lenders. So an A lender would be Bank of America, Royal Bank of Canada. Those are A lenders. They have no interest in helping real estate entrepreneurs, in my opinion. No. So, and then there are equity lenders who really only care if the equity is there, and they'll lend you the money, higher interest rate. If you fail, they'll foreclose on it, or they'll power sale on it, and they get their money back and their fees, et cetera. They care, but they don't care that much. So I think my credit rating went from 850 or 880 out of 900 down to 610. 610 is not good. Anything over 710 is fine. You'll get pretty much whatever you want, but 610 below 600, that's not good. So you have to go to equity lenders. But even now, my credit score is 850, 860. Even now, A lenders won't touch me because I have too many properties. They go, we don't understand all of this. So it is what it is. But it doesn't matter if you're animating your properties and you're getting 6, 8, 10, 12% cap rates, and you're borrowing at 2.5, 3, 3.5, even 4%. It doesn't really matter. That's my opinion anyway. So I needed $48,000 of cash to close, plus some land transfer tax, plus some legals. So I needed about $51,000 to close, and I had $500. So I was short just a little bit. I was short $51,000 to close. In the bankruptcy, I was allowed to keep a couple of suits and my 15-year-old Saab. And the only reason that I was able to keep that is it had no value. Like maybe you sell it for scrap for $350. However, I had made a contribution to an NHL pension plan, which was something called a LIRA, locked-in retirement account. And I had about $65,000 in there. And the good news is, in a bankruptcy, I don't think you can touch these locked-in retirement accounts because they're an insurance product, I think, in a way. I'm not an expert at that stuff, but anyway, I still had it, which was good news. So I think Denise and Stuart on the call here, they're going to give me heck for this. But so I had this plan, which was to lend money from myself to myself, right? From the locked-in retirement account, lend it to myself to put down the money that I needed in order to do this. All right. Oh, I thought this was a really good idea. And I call up this lawyer. Now, I'm going to use the term SOB. This lawyer was an SOB. Sorry if I offended anybody, but he was a real SOB, squared, cubed. And I asked him 3 times, can I do this? I need this money from my locked-in retirement account, from my RRSP, from my tax-free savings account, whatever, from my 401k, from my IRA, independent retirement account in the United States, whatever it is. I need to borrow that money so I can close on this deal. No problem, this guy says. We do this all the time. That guy was a son of a gun. I'm still mad. Okay. And he said, no problem. 3 days before closing, he doesn't even have the guts to call me. He has one of his secretaries or flunkies call me. And she says, oh, no, Mr. Firestone, we didn't realize that this was loaning money from your locked-in retirement account to yourself. In other words, non-arm's length. Arm's length is when, if I did a deal with Chris O'Connell or Ruben Ugarte, this is called third party, right? We're not related, but I'm a related party to myself. I really actually quite like myself. All right, so think about that. 3 days before completion, the friggin' lawyer doesn't have the courtesy or the guts to call me, has his flunky call me, and she tells me, oh, no, we don't do that. So, it's a non-arm's length. We don't do those. So I said to her, well, wait a second. What's your plan? She said, what do you mean, what's our plan? I said, well, I have this closing coming up and I have no money now. I owe these people this money in 3 days. What's your plan? I said, well, she said, well, it's not our responsibility. I said, absolutely, it is your responsibility. I have emails galore. I mean, a whole bunch of them, emails galore. I'm still so mad. I get every time I tell this story, I better stop telling it. And I said, I'll send them to you. Where I said time after time after time over the last 2 months to your boss, this was a non-arm's length transaction, and can he handle it? And he said, yes, I have his answers. I'll send it to you. About an hour and a half later, I get an email back. If I printed it out, it would be pages, probably 3 or 4 pages. It was horrible. All the reasons why the law firm wasn't responsible. I hate that guy. Sorry about that. I shouldn't say that, but I do. I don't hate many people, but I hate that guy. So I had to call up the realtor. Remember, the realtor didn't like me to begin with. So I called her up and said, guess what? We're not closing on Friday. This is like Wednesday. What do you mean we're not closing? I said, well, let me just go through and I told her the story because I'm not taking the hit on this. I said, I'm willing to take blame when I screw up. I'll be the first guy to say, yeah, I screwed up. But I said, I'm not taking a hit on this. I told her what had happened. And I said, your seller, Joan, has a couple of choices. One, she can, she can terminate the deal, collect the deposit. By the way, my deposit was $500 because that's the only money I had, right? So $500, and so she can, terminate the deal and collect the deposit, which is very small, and she can sue me, or she can give me a 2-week extension for which I will pay another $500. But I understand why you're mad at me, and you have every right to be mad at me. But I want Joan to know this is not something, I'm not owning this. So she came back to me. To be fair to the realtor, she came back and said, yeah, we'll give you 2 weeks, but no more. I said, that's fine. So I then loaned $65,000 from my lira to a young fellow who had a house, and he wanted to build a chicken coop in the backyard of his house. So I had a mortgage on a chicken coop for $65,000, and this young fellow loaned me, $64,000 on a different day from his RRSP, so I could close on this deal. That is not a permitted transaction. Denise and Stuart McPherson, who are experts in this far more than me, will tell you that is not a permitted transaction. But desperate, and I'm certainly not coaching anybody to do what I do, but I was going to do whatever I needed to do to get back on my feet and to take care of my family. That's very important to me. So I can't coach you to do that, but that's what I do. And then I was able to close about 10 days later. And so now let's see if I don't know if I can go through all of this. So where did all my money come from? So look at this. I had to pay 6.5%. This is when interest rates were up, like 2% or less, to the equity lender for my first mortgage. I paid 5% to the chicken coop man for his loan to me. That was a second mortgage. And then what else did I do? Yeah, so then, so I had enough money to close, but I did not have enough money for the renovations. So I was out $43,000, right? Because I have to renovate it because you don't get that higher appraisal without it. So what I did was I borrowed another $45,000 from a hard money lender. Those are the kind of guys, again, I can't coach you to do this. Please don't do this. Those are the kind of guys that he charged me 15% on a promissory note. It was not a mortgage, just a promissory note. So I promised to pay you back in 6 months, $45,000. And those are the kind of guys that if you don't pay them back, they break your legs. Do you understand that? So I'm not advising anybody to do what I did. I'm just telling you what I prepared to do to get a restart. So, and he was, I can't tell you all the details of that, but that's enough. All right. So I used that money plus the little bit of extra cash I had in closing. So I was more than 100% financed to do the renovations. Then I got it reappraised. I put a new mortgage in place. It was enough to repay the old mortgage and the hard money lender. And I kept the chicken coop mortgage in place. He was good with that because, I had a mortgage on his place. He had a mortgage on my place. So he was fine with that. So I was able to take out within 6 months, after paying everybody back except the chicken coop man, $82,000 in cash, tax-free cash from this place. And I don't know if you know this film, but you know, these are two bad guys in a film, and there's a classic line. They say, "Hey, Mortimer, we're back." And so I didn't tell my wife all the details of what I was up to, but after we had you know, $82,000 in tax-free cash in our bank account, I did say, "Don, we're back," and that's how I got my start. All right, but please don't do that. Okay. But the good news here is that we have on the call with us today, you can see them, they're smiling, they're not giving me shit yet. Excuse my language, not giving me heck yet. We have Denise and Stuart McPherson, who really know how to do these kinds of loans. With our RSP lending, and in the United States with independent retirement accounts, I think you can go up to 100% loan to value. And there are ways for people like us who know something about buying good real estate, about animating it, driving up the value. If you have to do some things that are a little bit, you know, maybe your mom and dad won't approve of it, or your brother or your sister, but yes, you can pay somewhat higher prices as long as it's a bridge to lower interest rates. That's my opinion, provided you're not buying Long Beach property at 1.99% cap rates, or Alex DiNardo, as long as you're not buying Ottawa property at 1.99%. Okay, you got to find ways to animate that property. So again, I'm not recommending you do what I did, but there are very, very smart ways, legal ways, ways that you don't end up with your ankles broken or your knees turned around backwards. Okay, all right, so let me go get off of that. But I wanted to share with you some of the stuff that sometimes people like me do to make their personal situations better. All right, let's look inside this townhouse that I've talked so much about. So this is after animation. So we put in California shutters. I like California shutters. I never allow my tenants to put anything on, you know, even in my multi-res, all of them have blinds on them, California shutters. They're nice. They look nice from the outside. They're a good brand. They let light in and keep cold air out, or warm air out, if as the case may be. And what you don't want if you own a 12-unit apartment building is you don't want one tenant putting up an orange cannabis flag, and somebody else, that looks like heck. It will actually cause you to attract poorer tenants, and your whole building will degrade. So I think have a uniform look from the street is very important. So we also put in Brazilian hardwood floors, which you can see here. This was a den that we created. The den had a little bit of an electric heater. There's those California shutters again. It had a little bar here. This was a kitchen. We didn't have enough money to redo the kitchen, but we could reface the cabinetry, which we did, so it looked okay. This was the dining room. We put some nice chandeliers in it. This is the living room, which had a little bit of a cathedral ceiling in it. And you notice that we cut 3 holes in the wall here. This over here on the right-hand side, this faces west. So the light would come in at night or in the afternoon, and we get light into the interior of the building. Light's very important in these northern cities. So it was very nice. It already had a gas fireplace in the townhouse. We just built this I don't know, I guess mantle here around it. This was the balcony. This is the other view of the balcony. I call this a water view apartment because if you're 6 foot tall or 6'1" and you stand up at this end and you look that way, you can see the river. So it's water view, but only my sons can see it. I can't. I'm not tall enough. This is the view of another row of townhouses across from where we are. You can see that they're little in the front. They look like little hobbit holes at the front, but they're actually quite nice townhouses. We prettied up the bathroom. Again, we couldn't really do a full makeover, but we prettied it up. We put a stack washer and dryer in it. Then here's the Brazilian hardwood going down the stairs. We couldn't afford the Brazilian hardwood on the stairs itself, so we had to carpet it because it's quite expensive to put hardwood on the stairs. It might be a little slippery too, so still looks nice, though I think you'd agree. This was the master bedroom. This was the master bedroom bathroom. Again, we didn't really have enough money to do much more than tidy it up. This is another one of the landings. Then this was another bedroom. And it had a big bathroom, but it was really crappy. And again, all we could do was clean it up. Then this was my study. It had its own entrance to the outside, which I liked, so I could go out here and down to the river. This was my desk at the time. Tiny screens, but whatever. That was pretty much the time. Then we had a room in the basement, which was our yoga room, and we had some portraits of my kids up there too. This was just, we had a little garden, wasn't much, but it was a little garden in the back. We hadn't done much with it at the time. Then this was the path down to the river. You got down to the Otter River, which was quite nice. Lots of places to swim and kayak. We had underground parking, so you could come right in here with. We had a couple of cars, so you could park right next to the building and come in sort of midsection of the townhouse. We were attached underground to a big tower, so we could go to the tower and use the saltwater pool, the sauna. They had a workshop. They had, I guess, a common room, workout room. Maybe I already showed that. This was the front entrance. Remember, I said it looked a little bit like a hobbit hole, so it didn't look very impressive, but it was quite nice. I don't know, that's just a repeat. This was the tower that we were next to, so the townhouses are over here. And we were connected underground to this big tower, which had lots of services in it. Here is actually the townhouse that I bought, and you can see it's not very far away from the river. That's the tower we were connected to. It had a tuck shop, which was nice. My wife likes potato chips, so if she got the munchies on a Saturday night while we're watching a movie, I'd go to the tuck shop. They had, again, another workout room. They had, I think this was a squash court. They had a party room, and they also had guest bedrooms. So when our kids would visit us and our grandkids, there was actually in the big tower, there were some guest bedrooms. It was a pretty big townhouse, almost 1,800 square feet. Think about that, 1,800 square foot townhouses in Ottawa were selling for about $2.1 million. I bought this for $241, $250. Now, mind you, it needed some work. And here's a list of all of the renovations we did. So when you're doing these kinds of renovations, keep track of every single thing that you do and the cost, because your appraiser is going to need that, right? Because he or she, your appraiser, doesn't have Superman vision, right? Or Supergirl vision, you know, that X-ray vision. They don't know what's behind the walls. So every single thing you do, keep track of it and put in, you know, give it to your appraiser when you are ready for a reappraisal. And I've been through all these numbers, so I won't go through them again. And here's Mortimer. Yeah, it was this was the film, I think, Coming to America. What it was an Eddie Murphy film. And these two guys had fallen, these old fellas had fallen on hard times because they had done some bad things to Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd in an earlier movie called Trading Places. And then they have a cameo role in Coming to America. And this guy, Eddie Murphy, is a young prince who gives them some money. And Randolph says to his buddy Mortimer, we're back, because they got a little bit of cash. So that's where I was. And as I said, as I went through this case study, I don't mind paying high interest rates if it's a bridge to lower interest rates. All right. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that for our American viewers that they understand that some of the stuff that I've talked about here is also possible with independent retirement accounts. You can lend money from your self-directed IRA, things like residential and commercial mortgages, right? So you can do it in the States too, but you do need professional advice. You need to, Canada, you need somebody like Denise and Stuart to advise you. I am not qualified to advise on this stuff. I'm just reporting on what I did. Now, people often ask this question. I'll see if it's in anybody's asking that question. Let's see what Dustin has said. Can you hire an appraiser? I guess you mean an appraiser, just to find out the true value of the building, or only when you plan to refinance? That is actually a very good question, Dustin. I do on a regular basis appraisals, even when they're not really necessary. I do. And the reason for that is exactly, okay, Chris is saying I've hired an appraiser just to get a true number to present to investors on the property. That's excellent. And the other reason why you might do that, Chris and Dustin, is hopefully, if you're ever in a dispute with a partner or an investor, and he or she wants to exit, you can say, listen, let's not fight. Let's just get it appraised. It comes back at $500,000. We have a $300,000 mortgage. It's got equity of $200,000. You're a 1/3 owner. I'll remortgage this property, get an extra $67,000, give it to you. So don't argue, just appraise it and pay them out, all right? Because you don't want to spend any time if you could avoid it in litigation, right? That's a blood-sucking, soul-sucking, energy-sucking, negative energy activity can go on for years. So please try and avoid that if you can. All right, so I get this question a lot. If I could say one thing to that 39-year-old Bruce, what would it be? Well, I'll show you. My wife and I owned a business. This would have been in the 90s. It was called PETA. PETA is short for People Eating Tasty Animals. No, it's not. It's short for Presidential Executive Travel Apartments. And I'll show you what it is. It was kind of a cool thing. It was Airbnb before there was Airbnb. So this was a property in Ottawa, sort of close to downtown, that was built by the Berger family of Montreal. And there were two Bergers I knew, David Berger and Robert Berger. I don't remember which one I talked to, but I think it was David. So I called David in Montreal when they put this up for sale. These are just condo units. And they generally don't buy condos because they're hard to animate, but this was different. So I called David up and said, David, how are sales going? And what does a developer say when you ask how are sales going? What is the one word answer they always give? Great, right? Great. I mean, no developer would say, yeah, our sales suck. Great. I said, oh, that's terrific. Congratulations. It's going to be a nice project. How are your ground floor condos selling? Silence. Oh, I said, that's good news for me. So if you think about it, if you're a condo buyer, you'd rather be on the penthouse or the 5th floor or 6th floor rather than at grade or even the 2nd floor, right? These are usually much harder to sell. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to fully furnish them and put in all the technology. Back then it would have been a fax machine. That was email back then, fax machine, right? No internet. So I would put in beautiful furniture, television, cable TV. Oh my gosh. What else would I put in? Well, I told you I put in a fax machine, telephone. Telephone. Even had it wasn't rotary dials. You push on the buttons. So it was the best technology of the day. That fax machine especially was important. But what I really liked about it is you didn't have to go into the tower to get into these places. They all had access from the outside. And so remember, I'm bringing business models to real estate. As a buyer, you can have a real estate business model, and you should have one before you buy anything. But you don't have to tell the seller that. You don't have to tell your realtor that. You don't have to tell your lawyer that. You have to know it. Okay? And so I said to Mr. Berger, I said, so David, how many of those ground floor units really have you sold? Well, we got a lot of leads. David, how many of them have you sold? Well, none. Oh, okay. I said, well, how many are there again? He said, well, we have 16. I said, I'm going to buy them all. So he wanted $250,000 for them times 16, whatever that. What's that? $4 million. So I offered him $115,000 a door. And he took it, because he knew he was going to take years to sell the damn things. He thought I was a sucker. He said, oh, I got a sucker on the line here. I got to wheel him in. So I paid, instead of paying $4 million, which was the asking price, I think I ended up paying for 16 of them, like 1.7 or 1.8 million bucks for them. And I put them on the market, for short-term rentals. By that, I meant short-term back then was not, 2 days. I think the least amount of time you could lease them for was probably 2 weeks, but most of them were monthly visits. So there are a lot of people who come to the nation's capital, whether it's Washington or Ottawa, or for that matter, Paris, who are on assignment for government typically, or for technology. So, most of the leases would have been 1, 2, or 3 months, right? So they would have been short-term, but not 1 or 2 days. I didn't want to run a hotel. That's hard. And they were super successful. So what I should have told the 39-year-old Bruce was to put the PETA, Presidential Executive Travel Apartments, in my wife's name. Because when the Sands went bankrupt and I went down the drain, right? If it had been in her name, this is what would have happened. We were making just from those, actually we had those 16 units and I had 12 others in the west end of Ottawa. We had 28 units with no mortgages on them that were making about $50,000 a month. Now I can tell you, here I am at 70, you know, you have to do a lot of courses like this to make $50,000, right? You have to do a lot of coaching to make $50,000. So what would my life have been like if I had done one thing, which is not put it in my name or a company name, but put it in my wife's name? And if you're thinking, well, what if she had divorced you, Bruce? Well, I'm not too worried about that. A, she could have divorced me. Everybody has that right. But in Ontario and in California and places where I've done quite a bit of coaching, you know, it's community property. So it's 50-50, which I'm fine with, either way. So if she runs away with a younger man, perfectly understandable. I would have had 50% of the business and she would have had 50% of the business, but thank God she didn't. But what a difference that would have made to my life. Instead of having to work every day for 13 straight years, I might have had a bit more of a life, right? But it is what it is. So it was about 50 grand, right? So it's okay as you're building your portfolio to think about not just your investors and your you know, of your entourage, but it's okay to think about yourself, right? Because your first responsibility is to provide for yourself and your family and not to become a burden on society. That is your first responsibility, at least in my opinion. So I actually wrote for you guys, you know, I put together a handbook this week, how to really finance real estate. And I put it together and I think I sent it to you guys by email, but I'm going to put it in the chat box anyway. It's not that long. It looks like it's long because, you know, some of the books I wrote were hundreds of pages, but this is like 16 pages or something like that. You make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell. So buy smart. You know that. How to really finance real estate. I put together a huge list, just a laundry list. And if you have any questions on it, you come back to me at any time by email. I'll try and help you. How to avoid deal flopping appraisals. Right? If you have a bad appraisal, this whole system that I've described to you will not work. I want you to use mortgage brokers if you find one that you like and trust, because they can submit a project of yours or mine to 12 or 15, 20 lenders with a press of a button. Trust me on that. If you wanted to go and see a dozen lenders and it took you hours for each lender, you'd give up after 2, right? So use a mortgage broker. I put this in, I revisited Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad lessons. I put in Why Fast Money Wins. It's a very strong point he's made, which I didn't really understand, but I do now. At least I think I do. I put it in the handbook for you. And I put in what I think he means when he talks about no money down deals. I have something called the BARF method. You all know what the BRRRR method is, but the BARF method is buy, animate, reappraise, and refinance or something like that. So I call it the BARF method. Sorry about the description. And I also put in something that is very interesting, which is another way of raising money in real estate. It's called by issuing scrip. I'm just going to take a little water. And what I mean by that is a lot of real estate projects, including ones that I've worked on, you can issue scrip, which is today it would be like issuing, you know, a digital coin. But back then, back in the day, a scrip might be like Canadian Tire money or Disney dollars. It works in real estate too, and you can read that. So I'm just going to get out of this, and just in case you missed that email, and I'll put it in the chat box one more time, just so make sure you guys have it. You can copy it out of the chat box if you want. Okay. Now here's a couple more things that I'd like you to read, and that I did not send you, so I'm going to put this in the chat box too. This little booklet of mine, How to Really Finance, should be read in conjunction with How to Find Investors, because everybody asks me that. I've written about that quite extensively. And this you'll recognize from my talk today: buy when you are in financial trouble. Don't sell, buy, right? Think about how Ambleside saved my bacon, right? And then I put something else here that is really, people say, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. Sure it does. How to get sponsors for practically anything and why investing in real estate makes sense for nearly everyone. So I'm going to put these in the chat box too. So you got to copy them out, because when we finish in another 10 minutes, right, the chat box goes away. And oops, I think I screwed up. Oh, here we are. And you got to copy it out so you know, so you'll have them, okay? But if for some reason you can't find them or whatever, let me know. I will. I'll send, you know, email me. I want to hear from you guys. You have been a wonderful class. I've really enjoyed the questions and the case studies that you've let me use, so many of them from the class itself. It just has made it a lot more fun for me. So there you go. So I am doing another course, if you want, in March, another 3 Saturdays, if you would like to sign up. Some of you I know have already signed up. It's called Reward Yourself. So Fix It was about a simple portfolio, but Reward Yourself, I am going to do something that's really cool. I'm going to show you how to really find, buy, finance, renovate, refinance multi-res buildings with great cap rates. But I'm also going to sneak in a few commercial models that are really fantastic. All right, because some of you will graduate from buying, you know, duplexes and coach houses and everything else. Some of you will graduate to this. And it's called Reward Yourself, and you can sign up if you want. And I'd love to see you guys again. I'll tell you about this project. Some of you already know about it. This is one I bought in Belleville, Ontario from Power of Sale. Some of you have already seen this one. It's a 12,000 square foot building with 3 commercial spaces at grade, and then a bunch of apartments up here. I think there's 10 of them. I bought it for $280,500, which works out to $24 a square foot. You can't build a doghouse for that. And what I wanted to make sure you guys heard from me is that there's a lot of real estate training that frankly is not very good. They tell you about methods, you know, flipping houses, wholesaling, buying multi-res, but they don't tell you how to find great properties. That's one of the missing links. I'm going to talk about that, and I'll show you that clients of mine are doing unbelievable stuff and making bucket loads of money, but they have been trained by yours truly. I mean, I'm pumping my own tires here. I apologize, but it is true. And I'm also going to show you how I've cracked the code on how to do proper leasing, right? So leasing is very, very important in these mixed use, partly commercial, partly residential buildings. And I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you, I highlighted here, how to find those great investments. Here's one of them that clients of mine bought, and it had a vacant, it was like a convenience store. It had gone vacant, and it was not in particularly good condition. But I'll tell you what happened here. I'll show you how this partly commercial, partly residential building in Quebec, how well it has done. I'll show you some project in Sarnia. I'll show you a project in another small town, and I'll go through the Belleville project that I just described in detail. I'm also going to tell you about this. Oh my gosh, this is, I wish I could claim this was my idea. It is not. P squared or P2 are 2 architectural technologists, both named Patrick. That's why they're P squared or P2. Patrick Rutherford and Patrick England have developed a building, a multi-res, and they've been building a few of them. We're going to build a bunch more that have no internal corridors. Multi-res buildings with no internal corridors. I call them quadrans. Don't bother to look it up. It's just a name I made up. And I'm going to go through this model as well. It's fantastic. And you can imagine it's the most efficient floor plate I've ever seen, but I'm not going to go through it in detail right now. So if you want to join the course, you go to burningrocksolutions.com/multi-res with a hyphen in it. So Burning Rock Solutions, remember my last name, Firestone, burningrocksolutions.com/multi-res. And I had to up the price of the course because this course took a little bit more out of me than I thought. So we upped the price to $697. Then Steve Foster, who's been helping me, discounted it to $497. But Steve did create a coupon. So if you want to take that down, it's multi, I don't know where the number comes from, but multi 4942. If you put that into, like, you know, into the site, it'll reduce the price to $297 including tax. I don't have another $97 deal on this one. It was just too much for me. Now, one thing I did promise in this course, which I haven't covered, so I'm going to do it in, see how much time I've got. I got 6 minutes. So I'm going to blitz through one model that a number of you have asked me to do, so I'm going to do it. But just before I leave this page, burningrocksolutions.com/multi-res with a coupon code multi4942, and I'd love to see you guys in March. 3 sessions, March 12th, 19th, and 26th, all Saturdays, again, noon till 2 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. till 11 Pacific time. All right, so I got to show you this one because it's in demand. So this is one of my coaching clients. He's a tech guy, really smart. His name is Ali Alili. So this isn't actually a picture of him, it's just clip art. And you know, I mean, it's no surprise to you guys that I like microsuites. So Ali did some work with me, and he knows all about microsuites. Simple but effective. Nobody wants roommates anymore. They just want microsuites. So, and this was the UBC plan. I just had to show it to you again. University of British Columbia. Their microsuites were so small they called them nano suites, 140 square feet, but they function, right? Little kitchenette, a closet. They call it open space for storage. You can put a briefcase there. They do have a full bathroom, a desk that turns into a bed that turns into a desk. So it's good. And microsuites are hot. I mean, my kids and lots of millennials and Gen Zers or whatever they call them, they want to be like the tiny house, less house, more life. They want to have less house and more life. They want experiences, and they don't necessarily want to be mortgage poor. I get that. All right, so this is what Ali did. All right, so he doesn't tell me, he says, oh, I'm going to buy a duplex, and yeah, I'll do something with the basement. I said, what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know, maybe some basement apartment, something. But that's not what he did. So this is the plan here. How am I doing on time? I don't want to hold you guys up. I got 4 minutes. So this is the plan that he put together, and he only showed it to me afterwards. And there's some changes that I would make to it, but it's a very good plan. So let's see if I can remember. Okay, you come down, this is the basement to a bungalow. It has its own separate entrance, that's important. So separate entrance, you come down here, you turn right, there's a stacked washer and dryer. You turn left, and you come into a common space here. So this common space has a full kitchen in it. You go in here, and you've got a micro suite here. So you come in here, you got a bedroom, you got a desk, you got a little sofa here. You got a lunch counter here. You got a micro kitchen here. There's your fridge, and there's your private bathroom. So it's a nice little micro suite. I don't know how big it is, but you know, probably 200 square feet, I guess, maybe a bit more. Then you go into this one here, hang a right, and very similar. Bed is here. Your study area here. Your lunch counter is here. Your micro kitchen, fridge is here. There's your sofa again, and there's your private bathroom. And then there's the third one down here, right? Same deal, right? Lunch counter, I like this one. This lunch counter here, micro kitchen, fridge is here. This one I think is the best one. Here's your study area, there's your sofa, and there'd be a large screen TV here because he has it with the tech package too. There's your bed, and there's your private bathroom. Now, what are some of the changes I would make to this plan? And of course, the next one that Ali does, he'll probably do it differently. First of all, he's got 4 kitchens for three apartments. That makes no sense. The reason he had to put this is he couldn't get his building permit without having a full kitchen in the basement, right? So I said, Alan, next time, just put the full kitchen in one of your microsuites and make this like, you know, put a foosball table in there, one of those mini ping pong tables, make it like a rec room, you know, a party room for the you know, do something with it, but don't have 4 kitchens for three apartments. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that next time. So one of these units would have a full kitchen, I think. And I personally don't really like bathtubs. I would, you know, especially if you have some older folks in there or younger folks, I guess too. I mean, when was the last time you guys had a bath? I don't remember the last time I had a bath. So I would just put showers in here, but it's a very, very good plan. But here's the key thing, and this is the last we're going to do today. So he could have put a 3-bedroom apartment in there, and Ali's a very, very good you know, he gets very good prices. He would put a 3-bedroom apartment in the basement for 90 grand. It would cost me at least 135,000. He's just more effective than I am. I'm a retail buyer. He's kind of a wholesale guy. He'd get about $1,800 a month in gross income from it. His net would be 66% of it, approximately about 14,000. So his cap rate would be about 15.8%. Very good, certainly well above 6%. Alternative B, which he did instead, was put in 3 basement microsuites, a little bit more expensive, about 20 grand more, because there's more stuff in it. But he gets $995 base rent for each one, $50 for parking, $85 for the tech package, $1,130 times 3, $3,390. His cap rate, 24%. Now that is really good. That is fantastic. So another skill testing question on the right-hand side. What is better, alternative B, alternative A, or Bruce's minimum cap rate? Well, we all know the answer to that. If you said A or C, that would be bad after 3 weeks of hearing from me. It's obviously the microsuite. He's done a fantastic job. Plus, if you think about it logically for a minute, he's got 3 separate leases down there. And people, because they're not sharing, you know, they're likely to stay much longer. They're not going to fight as much, at least we hope. And if one leaves, it doesn't, you know, if he had a 3-bedroom apartment down there and a single lease and they leave, he's gone from 100% occupied to 0. With 3 microsuites, if one of them leaves, he's gone from 100% occupied to 2/3 occupied. So his cash flow is probably more predictable. So it's a fantastic animation. And, you know, I see it all the time. This is one of the great things about doing this coaching and teaching thing that I do now, is that my students often outperform by quite a way their prof. So there you go. Dustin is saying, let's see if I can read it. Dustin is saying, are you allowed to have 3 leases? I thought the insurance would not allow this. To the best of my knowledge, Dustin, and certainly Ali is more than willing to answer any questions. If you reach out to me, Dustin, I'll put you in touch with Ali rather than me answering them. But everything he did was legal, right? So he's got a building permit, he's got insurance, and he didn't have to do any deals with you know, leg breakers either. Okay. All right. So just reach out to me. Mark's asking, I would love to know how he convinced the city. And Dustin says, I think you do know Ali. But anyway, listen, guys, we're now at 2:02, so I did 2 minutes overtime. I hope you've enjoyed the class. I really means a lot to me that you guys came here. Thank you very much. I'm saluting you. Alex, it was great to see you after 27 years. Ruben, always good to see you. Rose, everybody, you all know how to get in touch with me. James, Anna, all the guys, Pierce, of course, everybody, please, Patrick, reach out to me with any questions you have. And I hope I'll see you again soon. All right, everybody?
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye, Ruben.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you.
It's great to see
Thanks,
you.
Bruce.
Thank you so much, Bruce.